Bradeaux joining us, his debut here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. Great follow. He got a lot of great content, a lot of great information for your Houston Rockets. Breaks down games as they are going on at BRADEAUX NBA.
And he's got, and it pinned on his Twitter page, you can see his interview with Alperin Şengün, which is really cool. He and the Bradeaux and Will podcast, they do a lot of great things. There's some really good, every once in a while I'll jump into some Twitter spaces, and Twitter spaces, if you've never been on one, like Rockets have some really good ones.
Yeah.
They've got some good fans who create Twitter spaces, and it's basically almost like a post-game show where they'll talk about stuff, talk about draft stuff. And
good stuff.
And Bradeaux has been a guy who caught my eye because he hustles and puts a lot of great content in there. And it's not always easy, Bradeaux. And you even said it during the year, like, man, this is really getting hard to try to be positive with this team. But with the bad eventually comes the good. And we saw that with the Astros years ago when they made the move, into being who they are now. How far away do you think the Rockets are realistically from making everyone happy in this city like the Astros have?
First of all, I want to thank you guys for getting me on. I always wanted to get on the radio and just talk about the Rockets. But when it comes to how far away do I think they are, this is the most important offseason. They've had this 3-year rebuild, really planned for this offseason to have all this cap space, the most in the NBA with $60 million plus. They have all these trade assets that they got from Brooklyn. And they're going to try to bring in vets for Ime Udoka. They're going to try to, kick it into phase 2, which is getting back into the playoffs. And hopefully contention is obviously phase 3. So it's really going to be most important, regardless of what veterans they bring in. They need that young core to start gelling together. That young core being Jalen Green, Alperin Şengün, Jabari Smith Jr., and Tari Eason. Once they kick it into high gear, that's when we'll have a better idea of when they're going to be ready for that championship contention. So I'm praying for maybe 3-4 years down the line. They'll be in the playoffs regularly, hopefully maybe getting second-round appearances and maybe further. But this is a young group that does have a ton of potential. I'm excited to see what they can do. It's hard to tell, ultimately, watching Stephen Silas ball, especially the past 3 years, when they've won 17 games, 20 games, and 22 games. That's not fun basketball. As you guys mentioned, it's hard to kind of create content and watch a team like that. So I appreciate and I commend anyone whoever stuck through that. But they can get through it. Again, if they bring in the right pieces and Udoka can bring those guys together and have them playing team basketball, the future looks really bright.
Bradeaux with us here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. BRADEAUX. Is that Cajun? Are you Brad, but in Cajun land, you're Bradeaux? Is that your first name? Is that your last name?
Yeah, so full backstory. My name is really Brad LeBlanc, but all my friends have always called me Bradeaux. Creole background, and that's just a nickname I've had growing up. But yeah.
No, I knew it had some Cajun flavor. He's one of us.
LeBlanc.
Yeah, he's a piece.
You ain't Cajun. Your wife is from South Louisiana.
Yeah, I'm Cajun.
You don't get it. You're from Chicago. That's not Cajun.
I'm part of the culture. So Bradeaux is with us here at Bradeaux NBA. Bradeaux, I am convinced that they got a lot of money to spend. And not a great offseason to spend it, quite frankly. There's not a lot of great stuff out there. How about, Middleton turning down that $40 million? Is that a target? Is there any way Chris Middleton comes here?
I've heard Chris Middleton's name thrown around recently. I want to say John Fisher had brought that up a while back. Ime wants those winning pieces. He did say he wanted a shooting wing. Depending on how they want to spend that money, it looks like their big money is going to be going towards either James Harden or it looks like Fred VanVleet on a short-term deal. So I don't know if they can fit Chris Middleton into that mix. If they feel like if they struck out on maybe a James Harden and a Fred VanVleet, maybe they could turn their attention to a guy like Chris Middleton, because I know they want to use that $60 million. They want to use it wisely. But if they do go a Chris Middleton route, I hope it's short-term, like a Fred VanVleet kind of deal.
Are you pro or anti-Harden coming here?
When it comes to James Harden, I've always said this team was last in the NBA in assists. They were last in turnovers. They need a guy who's a playmaker. But, I was preaching the whole season. You could check my Twitter. I was like, give him max. But, you look at those last few playoff games, and that's not a guy you want to tie long-term max money to. So I understand everybody pushing back on the James Harden idea. I would personally be okay if he came, but I'd also be okay if he didn't come as well, because I understand the negatives. And, James Harden isn't that playoff performer, but he's a guy that's going to be a regular season raiser. And I would be happy to see this young core at least build from being with a guy like that and getting to the into the playoffs. But again, there's other ways for the Rockets to be well off without a guy like James Harden.
Yeah, one of the
ball
things.
Dominant.
I'm sorry for jumping. One of the things I've noticed that people when I pay attention to Rockets Twitter, it's like people are kind of stuck in the idea. It's like a cul-de-sac where they can't get outside of the idea of just what you know, right? Which is James Harden. You know James Harden, and you know what he'll do, and he will make you in the short term a better basketball team. But what does he have that will create sustainable growth for the young guys? Is he a mentor? He's never been a mentor for young players. He hasn't been that guy. Would he make this team better in the short term? Yes. But I do think that people maybe don't always think about, well, who are the other options out there and what could they do? And I'm not sure that we're really giving enough credit to Ime Udoka, because I think Udoka could have a huge impact coming on the heels of Steven Silas, could really have an impact on getting the players to look at ball a different way and to maybe get into the defense and the competitive nature on a 48-minute basis. I really think he could have a huge impact on this team, regardless of Harden, regardless of any of the free agent acquisitions. But you tie it to the right free agent acquisitions, and you may have something going here earlier than maybe the 3 or 4 years you're talking about.
Right. And when you say some guys they can bring in, you're referring to point guards in specific or just guys in general?
Yeah, so for me, it's about point guard. I think the right point guard to fit with Jalen and the right point guard from a high, screen and roll stuff with Şengün, because Şengün can flash the high post, he can high screen and roll, or he can work from the low post. And I know you're a big fan. You had a video cut sliced together right around Christmas time, and it had all of Şengün's top plays, and it's like over a 1 week period, I think it was, or a 2 or 3 game period. And and that's when I realized this is baby Jokic. This is exactly who he is. And I just think he's so special that I also think that Udoka may take a look at this and say, you know what, we're going to go a little bit more through Şengün moving forward, because we think that our efficiency numbers are going to be better that way.
Yeah. Şengün, he's an amazing talent. That is a guy you can ultimately run the offense through. We saw it last season. And I've been curious to see what they can do to make, the offense revolve around him. But I don't know what the vision is. We'll have to see what they do this free agency. But when it comes to point guards, as you mentioned, again, if not James Harden, Fred VanVleet is going to be that guy they look towards. If not him, I've seen Austin Reeves' name thrown around. That's not a primary ball handler necessarily, but I've seen that name thrown around. But again, the Lakers are expected to match that off, so that's unrealistic. Another guy who hasn't been mentioned, a guy like Monte Morris. He's on the Washington Wizards. Really good assist-to-turnover ratio, 5+ assists, and kept it to around 1 turnover, which is really good. I don't know if that's starter level, but that's a guy that can come in and Ime Udoka would really enjoy. So just any guy who's a good playmaker and keeps the turnovers down, because I'm sick of watching Rockets basketball and all the sloppiness, and that needs to change immediately. So a guy like Monte Morris is a guy I'm thinking of when it comes to point guard. Not much of a playmaker with this next guy, but Patrick Beverley, he said he was interested in coming back on his podcast. That'd be a guy I'd love to have as a backup point guard. But I haven't really seen other names thrown around like that when it comes to point guard. We've heard Harden, VanVleet, Austin Reeves as a guard, and then Monte Morris is just my idea, because the Wizards are having a fire sale right now. So I wouldn't mind if the Rockets jumped in on that.
Bradeaux with us here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. I was so disappointed. I know a lot of people were when the Rockets ended up 4th in the NBA lottery. Could it be a blessing in disguise? Is there a chance that Amen is going to be that good?
Amen Thompson. So, funny enough, I live in Atlanta right now, and I got a chance to watch Amen a few times. And this is a guy, if you're unfamiliar with him, 6'7" in height, 7-foot wingspan. As a point guard, he's going to come into the NBA being a top-tier athlete, really good playmaker, has the tools to be an amazing defender. If he hits, these draft guys, he has the potential to be the second-best player from that draft class behind Victor Wembanyama. But, of course, everyone knows with him, the shooting is such an issue, and it's broken right now, and that is the main concern. But if he ever gets that jump shot to work, he could be a really good NBA player. When it comes to the Houston Rockets, I was initially concerned with fit, because you have a guy like Alfred Şengün who doesn't really shoot threes. And if you're going to plug him in with Amen Thompson, then you have 2 guys on the court who aren't shooting threes and shooting for this rebuild, and they need shooters desperately, and that's what Ime Udoka has been saying as well. But then I started to think, Amen Thompson again, he could be an elite playmaker again. If that shot comes around, we're looking at a guy like, De'Aaron Fox, some of those downhill guys in the NBA that just looked really good. And when we saw Fox took a crazy leap for Sacramento this past season, if that jumper even gets to maybe 34% and he's shooting it regularly, he's going to be an insane talent. So that's a guy you bank on. He's a guy you can build around, and that's a great player for this Rockets team who's lacking a playmaker for the past 3 seasons after James Harden left.
Yeah, do you would you have a preference of drafting, Thompson, Whitmore, trying to make an aggressive move to get up and get Brandon Miller, who I know who they like, but you'd have to get to up to 2 more than likely to do that? Or what are your thoughts? John and I have talked about this, about packaging 4 and one of your players and going and finding a guy that you think is the right veteran fit for your team. What about moving the number 4 pick? Do you think there's much of a chance of that happening tonight?
Ooh, when it comes to that 4th pick and moving it for a winnable vet, it is difficult. We've seen teams in the past try to do the same, and it's hard to find a deal. And when it comes to moving up, you'll see a lot of fans. If they move up, it's got to be Scoot Henderson, because I think Scoot Henderson is the clear number prospect in this draft. And again, this is a team that desperately needs that point guard. Brandon Miller, though, I do like Brandon Miller. I think he's a really good shooter, great plug into this Rockets team. Has the tools to be a great defender, 6'9", 7-foot wingspan. Ime Udoka, he can really work with that. He also has a playmaking feel to his game as well. But again, they better not be trading up for Brandon Miller. If they trade up, it needs to be Scoot Henderson. And when it comes to a veteran, it's going to be hard to find a winnable vet. In theory, I would like that idea. And initially, I thought that was what I wanted them to do with the 4th pick, packaging 4, maybe a guy like KJ. And it would depend on the player. But I don't think there's a reasonable target out there tonight that would be better than taking in a guy like Ahmad Thompson, who could potentially change the direction of your franchise. So, and then Cam Whitmore, as you mentioned. I do like Cam Whitmore. He shot He had 24 dunks in his 26 games this year, which is an insane amount of numbers. Same amount of dunks. Shot 64.5% at the rim, which is really good. 40% catch and shoot. So that's a guy Ime Udoka could like as well. That's a guy I would not take at the 4th pick, but I've heard his stock has fallen. And if they could trade up to get him maybe at 10-ish, which I don't think is realistic, but if they could trade it for a guy like Cam Whitmore, I would do that. But at the 4th selection, again, guys, I would definitely say Ahmad Thompson should be that guy.
Yeah, and I just don't know if you want to draft 2 more young guys. You might want to trade back from 4, get a future pick, and then take Whitmore if you wanted to do that. Is you trade back and get a future pick and maybe get out of the 20th pick. Because there's only so many young guys you can have. At some point, you're going to have to get more veterans.
Have you seen, Bradeaux, Bilal Coulibaly?
I have. That's the guy, Victor Wembanyama's teammate, say, with like a 7'2", 7'3" wingspan. He looks impressive.
You like him? He's moving up the draft, a bunch of draft boards.
I mean, I like him. He has a good feel for his game. His potential is up there. I think he could potentially go towards the lottery. But when it comes to pick 20, again, I agree with you guys. You can only have so many young guys on a team. With this Rockets team last year that had 10 players that were 22 or younger. So I'm good on the young players. But I've heard they like a lot of guys now. There's a few of them that they got green room invites that potentially they could be there at 20. One guy I'm looking at is a guy like Jet Howard, 6'8", really good shooter, 38.6% on catch and shoot threes. Has a playmaking feel to his game, had 2 assists per game last year at Michigan, which is pretty good for a forward. And also has a little sidestep to his game. So a guy like Jet Howard, I think, would be a good fit offensively. For Ime Udoka, he's just a bad defender. So I'm curious to see what they do at pick 20. If it was up to me, I would be trading that pick tonight.
8:30 ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. That is Bradeaux. He is a great follow at Bradeaux NBA. At Bradeaux and Will is another Twitter handle that they have for their podcast.
Bradeaux puts together great content for a basketball team that has been terrible the last 3 years. Imagine what's going to happen if you get a good team to start putting content together for. You won't even know what to do.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. I've been waiting for this Rockets team to be that team that I grew up on. I really started watching them in those T-Mac and the Brady years. Again, they were struggling getting up the first round then until they had that one breakthrough in 08-09. But I saw them get to playoffs every year with James Harden, and I just want to see a championship team. I know you guys are lucky to witness those back-to-back championships. I wasn't lucky enough to see those, so I'm hoping to see that and create content for a team like that, because that's going to be the most amazing thing. So I can't wait for that.
Bradeaux, we appreciate it, man. Thanks for joining us, and let's do it again.
Sounds good. Yeah, have me on whenever. But thank you, guys.
All right, Bradeaux with us here on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.